Welcome to the Rustic Garden Homestead. Today's video is all about getting your fall garden, your cool weather crops started in July and August. Now every zone's a little bit different, so in some places you'd be starting about now, middle of July. Other places maybe the beginning of August. But the idea is while the soil is still warm, you're going to get a lot of your warm weather crops out. The ones that take a little bit longer to mature, they're going to get going, growing in the warmth, establish, and then the temperatures are going to drop and they're going to finish maturing in the cool weather. They're going to have great taste. That's what they love. So these beds have been cleaned out. I'm going to attach a video that I shot previously to show you how I set the bed up back there using organic granular fertilizer and some compost. Basically just getting the beds ready for direct seeding. Now this bed's pretty full. Let's just say, because I would love to say just put in 2-3 inches of compost, mix it in, but not everybody has compost. So let's just go for this bed as if we didn't have compost available. I'm going to use an organic granular fertilizer. I recommend getting any organic granular that's on sale. They're all pretty much the same: chicken manure, blood meal, bone meal, etc. This is slow release. It's going to break down with the soil microbes, moisture. It'll break down into a form of NP and K your plants can use, and it's going to slowly feed them. But just, I've had a lot growing in here. A couple big handfuls. We'll do this in real time. And I'm just going to scatter this all the way down. And that's going to be enough organic granular fertilizer. You don't need to overdo it. This is a lot, but I'm going to be mixing this in 4 to 6 inches deep. I'm also setting this up for next spring. Just getting the organic granular in there. That's just kind of like a vitamin. It lets you know you've gotten your NP and K in there. You do want to add compost. The whole key to successful growing is just really nice soil that has organic matter in it, lots of microbes, lots of soil life. The organic granular is just an addition. We use that when we don't have a lot of compost available. I also want to raise the level here, and filling beds can be expensive. I'm just going to be using some basic bags of topsoil, nothing fancy. Going to drop a few bags in, mix all this together, and then I'm going to direct seed. And that's going to work, and that'll be effective for the fall. As you get more compost, as you get more organic matter, just add it into your bed. Slowly but surely you're going to build great soil. And the bed over there, I'll cut in that piece of video from a previous video I did, just showing you how I set it up with organic fertilizers and with some compost. I'm just adding in 2 40-pound bags of topsoil. I will link a video that shows you what are in bag products in the video description. If you want to check that out, that'll save you a lot of money. This is really inexpensive. It's a good way to kind of raise the raised bed here. I will be adding in compost in the fall. Not worried about that. But you don't have to spend a ton of money to make your beds perfect to start. We're going to direct seed beets, turnip, some other cool weather crops in here. I'll show you how to do that. Just get it in, and we're going to spread it out across here, and then we're going to mix everything in to about 4 to 6 inches deep. We're going to plant the beets in rows here in Maryland. Actually, today's 99 degrees. I'm in Maryland zone 7, so it's really hot. And again, adjust the timing so that you get maybe 4 or 6 weeks of the warmer weather for certain cool weather crops, and then your fall temperatures start rolling in. So that might be middle of July in some areas, early August in other areas. But we're going to do a single row of beets and turnips. I get tremendous whitefly pressure, so if I put these closely together and fill up the whole bed, most likely I'm going to end up with an infestation of whiteflies. So what I'm going to do is be planting these in rows, give a good foot or so in between them, and that's going to be my 3rd round of beets. This is actually my 2nd round of beets. Beets are seed pods, so when you get a beet seed, it's actually multiple seeds in there. So these are all ready to harvest. And you can see just a simple row, beautiful beets. I want to get them started again now. Beets, turnips, rutabagas, they can handle the heat. They might get beat up, but they're going to establish, and then you're going to get this beautiful crop of fall produce coming into your garden just because you got it started early in the months of July and August. The organic granular fertilizer, the topsoil was all mixed through 4 or 6 inches deep, and I just really prepped this area right where the sunflower is, all the way down to here where this mesh is, this fencing. I'm going to be putting peas in there later. So I went through, mixed everything together. This is really nice soil. It's what I want it to be. And then you just want to make sure, again, that you got a good 4 inches for root development and stuff like that. This is all really ready to go. What I like to do is really set up just a little planting hole, about 1/2 inch deep. For spacing, I actually reshot this part because it can get very confusing. So because I have whitefly pressure that rolls into here, especially in the summer, that's when they tend to be, hanging around in the gardens, I'm going to be spacing my rows. Like here's one planting row, the other planting row, 10 to 12 inches apart. I want more space in between them. You could go to 18 inches. The more space you have in between your rows, the easier it is to manage any potential problems. It's harder for kind of like a, massive swarm of whiteflies to take hold when you put more space in between the crop. So spacing for the rows, 10, 12, even up to 18 inches depending on what you're growing. For the actual row, I just do a little depression about 1/2 inch deep, and I'm doing every 2 to 4 inches depending on the size that you want your beet, your turnip, or your rutabaga to be. If you want a really big turnip, you're going to put more space in between. So typically my spacing, I don't measure it out, but it's 2 to 3 inches, and I'll pick things when they're a little bit smaller. But the little trick that you can do is if you put them more closely together here, this is probably about every 2 inches, you're just going to harvest every other one when they're smaller, and then that gives the remaining beets or turnips, rutabagas, whatever, more space to grow. Now, cool weather crops, we're talking about getting them in now. Cool weather crops that bolt really quickly, like radishes, pak choy, bok choy, they're not going to go into much later. Spinach, not till later. Lettuce, not till later. So the main really root crops and some of the brassicas are what I like to get in now when it's warmer and I still have a lot of time before my fall temperatures roll in. Let me get these planted and labeled. One trick that I'm using is I have sunflowers around this area, and it's cooling the ground. The shade casts to the ground, the sun's not beating down on it, helps keep moisture in there. Perfect for a fall planting because they prefer cooler soil. So these aren't going to get beat up by the sun. You don't want to do this where the sun is just beating down 10 hours, every day. It's going to overheat the soil. Why is that a problem? Sometimes when these germinate, and if you're not watering every day, the sun beating down on here can raise that temperature to 100, 110 degrees in that top inch, even hotter. And it can kill off your germinating plants. Once they're just little seedlings, they run out of water, they die. Sometimes high heat prevents seeds from germinating. So some shadier area at times works better for the fall crops. The other thing that you can do is you could put a 50% shade cloth over this. It lets in 50% of the sun, creates 50% shade, and these plants will do beautifully. That's one way to really get those cool weather crops out early in later July, in August. And why is that important? Well, maybe you have a shorter fall. Your cool weather crops can take a frost, but if it really rolls in heavy and the cold comes, the plants stop growing. So you can get a nice jump on the season by planting them now. And that might be, maybe you want to grow Brussels sprouts that take 100 days. You want them to enjoy the warmth now, accelerate their growth, and then, they're going to mature into the fall. All right, let me get to planting these, and then we'll go over to that bed and we'll start some cabbage and some kales and maybe some collards. Beet seeds are the larger seeds, and a beet seed is actually a pod. So there's multiple seeds in there. So I'm just going to be dropping in 1 beet seed per hole. And then the purple top turnips, they're smaller. I'm going to drop 2 seeds per hole and then thin down to the strongest plant. I like planting at least 2 seeds per hole. Just this way you're just not waiting around for something to germinate that's not going to germinate. Here's my dog. Hey Willow, stay there. Stay. These seeds should germinate very quickly. The turnips probably under 7 days, the beets probably about 10 days. So they're going to germinate really quickly once they're planted because the soil is so warm. The beets and turnips are in. Decided to go with 1 row of the purple top turnips. They actually mature more quickly than beets, and we love beets here, so I did a 4th row of beets, and I'll be putting more in. Once they're in, we want to just water everything in really well. And like I was saying, because the sun can bake this soil and get it, well over 100 degrees, once these germinate, you want to make sure you're watering just about every day, depending on how hot it is in your area, how much rain you're getting, what the clouds are like, etc. If you have just straight 95+ degree days and the sun is beating down on here, you really want to make sure you're watering, or it's going to impact how quickly your seeds germinate. I forgot about carrots. We're going to be planting some carrots. Carrots sometimes don't germinate when it's really, really warm. So, you know, I'm going to run a little bit of an experiment, plant them now. Usually I plant them in August. Sometimes they don't get to full maturity. So I do recommend people experiment. Plant some of these cool season crops, you know, today, and maybe you're starting a little bit too early. But use a journal, take notes, and just see how they do. Where the other grouping of brassicas and the carrots are going, I'm going to be putting down some shade cloth. That will help keep the soil cooler, and that will help the carrots to germinate. I just wanted to show you how much water I really put on here in real time. Really soak it in, and I'll be doing this every day, making sure, you know, that I keep everything cooled down with the water. If it rains and it's a good half an inch to an inch of rain, I'll probably skip the watering. But you need a good amount of rain to really make a difference. I like using, these are shims. You find these in the kind of the wood section of Home Depot or Lowe's, and I'd like to use them to just label what's growing. So 4 rows of beets, 1 row of purple top turnips. So let's go over to that other bed and plant the brassicas and the carrots. These are the last of my carrots that I planted in the spring, and they did pretty well. Some of them are going to not form roots, they're going to flower. Even though these are biennial, and a lot of people say, well, if you plant carrots the first year, you're going to get a nice carrot, and then the second year, if they hang around, they're going to flower. That's true, but sometimes they also flower the first year. Going from the cool weather of our spring into the summer, sometimes carrots don't do that well. These are Danvers carrots, and they're beautiful. I mean, look at that. It's a really nice crop. The whole key to carrots are making sure you go down deep enough and loosen the soil so you get a nice straight carrot like this. So this is what we're going to plant over into the other spot. Again, using the warmth now to get quicker germination, quicker growth, and then it'll cool off and the carrots will form nicely into the fall. So I'm cleaning out beds. I'm going to show you how to set this up if you were going to be growing peppers in here. This is a basic setup you can use really for any bed. This is technically a raised bed, but when the sides are less than really 12 inches, I call it a framed bed. And you would do this really for your earth beds, for your raised beds of any size sides. Similar if you're setting up your containers. Containers are a little bit of a different beast. You got to make sure you really put in a lot of nutrients because plants suck the life out of the soil in containers. So first thing I want to show you is it was raining for about 2 hours. Water is going to be really the difference between success and failure when it comes to most of your plants, but peppers. It was raining a long time, but we've had kind of drought conditions, and you can see the water didn't even really soak down. It was a hard rain. It was for about an hour or so. So even if you get a rain, it has to be significant, an inch or so, to really soak into the soil. This would really do nothing. If the sun came out, this would just dry up. Any plants that were in here aren't going to get the water you think they got, and they're going to suffer. So watering is a key. We'll be talking more about that. So I've weeded everything out, and if you're setting up your beds in the spring, you just weed them. My soil is pretty good. I mean, there's good organic matter in there, but it's pretty heavy. Lots of clay. You don't need perfect soil to start. Maybe mix in some peat moss if you have heavy clay, kind of break it up. You want organic matter in there to hold water. If you have tons of compost, just add in several inches of compost, mix it through. You can mix your soil up in the beginning. Don't worry about turning it, you're not hurting anything. In the first couple of years, you do more turning. After your soil is set up, you can kind of just let it sit. So this bed has been around for 4 years. Take any organic granular fertilizer that's on sale. I usually recommend it should cost less than really $2 a pound. It's all the same basic ingredients. It's usually chicken manure, blood meal, bone meal, which is pig blood, dried, crushed cattle bone, dried. They throw in some other stuff, but most of your organic granular really is the same ingredients. So don't pay a lot for it. I usually get what's on sale, and I just use that. So nice handful right down the middle. This would be how I set my beds up maybe in the spring. And you can see that I'm covering it well. This is a slow release fertilizer, meaning the microbes in the soil, moisture, water have to mix. The microbes have to digest this, break it down, and get And when it breaks it down, it gets nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium into a form that the plants can use. This is your dry organic granular. And if you want, put in a little bit more. If you get it on sale, you don't have to worry too much about this. In fact, this is a 27-pound bag. Got this on sale in January for under $5. Typically, 27-pound bag of Espoma, I'm not affiliated with them, is your cheapest way to buy it. It costs you maybe like $20 or something like that. It's a really good way to buy the organic granular. You don't need to use this step just to save you some money if you have a lot of compost, but I know we all can't make it. So I just spread out the organic granular like this. Let me throw down some compost so you get an idea of how to use that. So a big pile of compost right in the middle. Going to spread that out, you know, about an inch across the top, and then I'm going to mix everything under. Let me spread this out, and then I'll just show you the basic look at the soil once it's done. After I spread it out like this, I'm just taking a hand shovel and I'm turning everything over. You just want to mix it through pretty well. Once mixed through in that top 4-6 inches, this bed is ready for planting. We can put anything in there. I'm going to be direct seeding cool weather crops in here now for a fall garden if you want to subscribe and follow me. So this is nice and loose. If I had a transplant, I would just go ahead, drop it in, cover it over, water it in with the water soluble. We'll get to fertilizing. The larger seeds are the kale and collard seeds, the brassicas. Even the cabbage, the broccoli, the cauliflower, all the seeds look like that. And then the carrots are right there. The carrots, I'm actually using Nantes. I couldn't find the Danver variety. These are shorter and smaller. Planting hole for carrots, I do about really about an inch. 2 inches is probably more than you need. And because I'm putting more space in between, I'm just doing 2 rows right next to each other, and then about 4 to 6 inches in between the next row. The first grouping of carrots that I showed you was a big square planting, and that worked really well. But these I'm spacing out a little bit more. So I'm going to put in 2 to 3 carrot seeds per hole, thin to the strongest one. Now a trick here for the kale and collards, this says kale and collard transplants. I don't want them growing here. I just want to grow transplants. So I'm spacing them about 4 inches apart. That's 6 holes in there. The holes should be about 1/2 inch deep. You don't really have to worry that much about that. But I just want to show you. Basic planting hole right there in the bottom left corner. 4 inches another planting hole. I'm going to let these grow here, and I'm giving them enough space in between the holes that I can come in with a shovel, dig them up, and transplant them. These are going to go in a different place. Same, I'm going to do a row of cabbage right in here. I'm not going to grow the cabbage as closely together as I'm going to show you, but I'm going to dig them up and move them. The reason being is I don't have room right now for where I want my collards and my kale to go, or where I want my cabbage to go. So about 4 inches apart, 6 inches between the rows, I'm just going to let them grow here and dig them up. It's a lot easier to come out to this little space, water everything, take care of everything, not having to worry about growing transplants in containers by my house. I'm just going to grow them right here in the ground, let them get a big root system, dig up a big root ball, and then I will transplant them. But if you had the space, you know, I recommend planting kale and collards a good 8 to 12 inches apart if the plants are going to stay there. They do attract the whiteflies. Don't grow more kale plants than you can eat. Family of 2, maybe 2 or 3 plants. It just depends on how much kale you're eating. So if you did a row of 16, you're just going to have all this green growth there for insects to get on. So plant the amount that you can eat and consume, because you're going to be removing the leaves, which competes with, you compete with the insects that want to lay eggs on the leaves. And then for cabbage, you know, a good 12, even 18 inches apart, depending on the size of cabbage you're growing. I'm going to be growing early Jersey Wakefield, so I plant that about every, I don't know, 8 to 12 inches apart. I tend to harvest things a little bit early. Check out the spacing recommendations on the seed packet. That's all you really need to follow. This video is really about just getting them out earlier than you might think to help them get established. This is a early Jersey Wakefield. It was slow to grow. This whole row going down here before the peppers came in was cabbage. And I planted them about 12 inches apart. It's doing okay. Right now, in the warmth of mid-July, I could probably harvest that. The flavor's different, and it's not going to be as sweet. But I want to get that planted now. I don't really want to tuck it in here. Again, it becomes another place to water. So I'm going to set up a little nursery, so to speak, in the ground of the early Jersey Wakefield. And again, planting the cabbage about every 12 inches apart if you're going to keep it in its permanent place. And I highly recommend doing a single row. If you're going to do another row over here, you want a good 18 inches apart to just make sure where the peppers are, the peppers wouldn't be there, to make sure you have open space and make it easier to tend any problems. Storm clouds are rolling in. Again, you want to keep in mind how much rain you actually get. You usually get a quick storm. Sometimes it's a good inch or two of rain, crazy, perfect. Other times it's just a quick 1/4 inch of rain and it doesn't really count for watering. So I couldn't find the Jersey Wakefield, but I found the early Copenhagen, and I believe that's what I had in the clip that I just showed you. It was an early Copenhagen. These are going to be transplants. There's 7 cabbage going right in here, and about every 4 inches apart, and we'll just cover them over. While I was looking for them, I did find the Danvers half-longs, which is the carrot that I just showed you in the video. Inch or two apart, double row, and then there's spacing in between just to keep that airflow going. How closely you plant things together will be dependent upon the disease and pest pressure you get in your area and how well you can tend your garden. The more spacing, sometimes plants get a little bit bigger, but the more spacing, the easier it is to manage for problems. So, even though the rain's coming, of course, we're going to cover these up. Let me do that. You saw how I set this bed up, and you want to make sure that the soil is nice and loose to a good 8 to 10 inches deep, or longer depending on the size of carrot you're growing, but 8 to 10 inches is fine. If you have heavier clay soil like I do, if it's not loose, the carrots are going to be twisted. So we're just going to really soak this area in well. This is going to be the transplant bed for my Brassicas, and this is the first new wave of the cool weather crops that are going to be going into my garden. And then over in this space, I haven't decided what I'm going to put in there yet, but just make sure, just because you might have a lot of space open now and seeds are tiny and we all love gardening, don't overplant. You just, you don't need, I have 7, I think cabbage, 6, 7 cabbage going in here. I could grow 18, 24 cabbages, but I'm just never going to eat them. So my first wave, I'm staying conservative, 6 of them. We'll see how that goes. Thanks so much for watching. Please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com. Please subscribe. I'm trying to get to 750,000 subscribers. Every little bit helps. I appreciate that. And stick with me. I'll show you what you can plant in July, August, September, and October in your vegetable gardens. Again, thanks for watching.